I've lived long enough to realize that the secret to reaching 100 isn't hidden in science labs, health magazines, or bottles of miracle supplements. It's scattered quietly through everyday life, tiny lessons, small choices, habits so simple that most people overlook them. When younger folks ask me, often with an expression somewhere between curiosity and disbelief, "How are you still this energetic at your age?" I always laugh, a warm, rolling laugh that comes from knowing something they don't. It's not because I've avoided mistakes. I've made more than I can remember. And it's certainly not because I've lived perfectly. No, no. It's because I learned to treat life like a dance instead of a battle and began moving with it instead of against it. When I was young, I ate like the world was ending. Food was fun, food was joy, and food, honestly, was sometimes emotional therapy. I would eat until I was full, then keep going a bit more just because something tasted good. And one day I realized I was treating my stomach like a storage unit instead of a partner. The truth hit me gently. If I want to live long, I have to stop eating like I'm preparing for hibernation. So I began listening to my body, stopping when I was satisfied, not stuffed. It was new, strange, almost like learning table manners all over again. But the effect was magical. My digestion eased, my energy rose, and meals became experiences instead of endurance tests. Real food, actual food from the earth, became the cornerstone of everything. Vegetables, once the boring background singers of my plate, suddenly took center stage. Fruits, bright and sweet and full of life, became the desserts I didn't have to regret. Whole grains stopped being old people food and became fuel for longer, steadier days. And water, simple, unglamorous water, became my favorite drink. I used to think beverages needed color, fizz, caffeine, or logos, but then I discovered how good it feels to drink plain water, like rinsing dust off the inner walls of your body. My mornings changed the most. Instead of jolting awake, stumbling half-conscious toward coffee, I began drinking warm water first thing. It was like sending a polite wake-up message to my insides. Suddenly mornings were calmer, softer, kinder. And when you greet the day kindly, the day often returns the favor. Late-night meals disappeared. My stomach, I discovered, preferred sleeping alone. Digesting while I sleep never worked well for either of us, so I let the evenings belong to rest, not eating. Cooking at home, something I once saw as inconvenient, became a small daily act of self-respect. There's something grounding about choosing ingredients, chopping vegetables, and preparing food with your own hands. It turns eating into a ritual instead of a reaction. And in that process, I understood a valuable truth. The more simply I eat, the more deeply I live. Movement came next. I learned the hard way that sitting still ages you faster than birthdays do. The body is designed to move. Every muscle, every joint, every bone begs for it. Walking became my medicine. Slow, relaxed, observant walking. I don't power walk. I don't sprint. I simply move. I walk to think, to breathe, to admire trees, to listen to birds, to let my mind wander. And the more I walked, the younger I felt. Some people chase youth in creams and injections. I chase it one step at a time down the sidewalk. Stairs replaced elevators whenever possible. It wasn't about discipline. It was simply about choosing aliveness. Each step felt like a small victory over gravity, a reminder that my legs still worked, that my heart still wanted to pump vigorously. Stretching, oh, stretching. Nobody warned me that muscles quietly tighten with age, like someone turning a crank behind your back at night. I began stretching every morning and every evening. Nothing fancy, nothing painful, just gentle invitations to my body to lengthen. Stretching is the language of longevity. It says, "I still care about you." And the body responds by staying cooperative longer. Breathing deeply became my secret reset button. We breathe all day without noticing, but intentional breathing, slow, deep, mindful, cleans out stress like fresh air clears a dusty room. Whenever life felt overwhelming, I closed my eyes, inhaled fully, exhaled slowly, and remembered that everything passes. Posture turned out to be another quiet key to long life. I used to slouch like it was a sport, my shoulders rounded, my chest collapsed, my neck craned forward. But then I realized slouching wasn't just bad posture. It was a physical expression of carrying too much. When I learned to stand taller, the world seemed to open around me. Breathing became easier, thinking clearer, even walking more elegant. Sometimes lifting your chest lifts your spirit, but longevity isn't just about food and movement. If it were, we'd all be centenarians. The real battlefield, the place where the longest years are won or lost, is the mind. Stress used to follow me like a persistent shadow. I worried, overthought, replayed conversations, imagined future disasters, and none of it helped anything. One day it became painfully clear that stress wasn't a measure of how much I cared. It was a measure of how little trust I had in the natural flow of life. I started releasing the things I couldn't control, old hurts, future worries, unnecessary responsibilities. My shoulders felt lighter. Gratitude became my anchor, not in a grand spiritual way, just small acknowledgments of everyday miracles, morning light on the window, the smell of rain, a hot cup of tea, a quiet afternoon breeze. Gratitude transforms ordinary moments into precious ones, and suddenly life feels fuller, softer, more worth living. Laughter? Ah, laughter. It is the closest thing humanity has to a fountain of youth. I laugh at myself daily. Sometimes I laugh because I forget why I entered a room. Sometimes because my socks don't match. Sometimes because life is simply too ridiculous to be taken seriously. Laughter massages the heart from inside. Forgiveness became my emotional sunscreen. Holding grudges burns the spirit. Letting go cools everything down. I forgave not because people deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I learned to enjoy my own company. You spend a lot of time with yourself in this life. Better make it pleasant. I treat myself like a friend now, kindly, gently, with humor. Journaling gave me clarity. Some evenings I wrote 3 sentences, some days 3 pages. Either way, writing emptied the noise in my head, and solitude, true solitude, taught me how to meet myself without distraction. When you stop running from stillness, you discover how comforting it can be. Connection, though. Connection is the heartbeat of longevity. Humans don't thrive alone. Conversations, shared meals, friendly neighbors, old friends who still remember your foolish youth. These things stitch your life into something warm and meaningful. I surround myself with people who lift me up, not weigh me down. People whose laughter is genuine, whose kindness feels effortless. And slowly, through all these discoveries, I formed one rule that shaped everything else. Life becomes longer when you become lighter. Lighter in body, lighter in mind, lighter in spirit. That is where the journey truly begins. As I moved deeper into my later years, something else revealed itself to me. The heart doesn't only beat for survival, it beats for connection. Without people to laugh with, talk to, hug, share stories with, or simply sit beside in silence, life feels thinner, as if the world has less color. I noticed it most on days when I isolated myself too much. The walls grew quieter, the hours longer, even my thoughts grew heavier. So I made it a point to reach out, not just when I needed company, but because company itself is nourishment, and it starts with the simplest interactions. A hello to the neighbor sweeping his porch, a wave to the mail carrier. A quick conversation with the woman at the bakery who always remembers, I like my bread slightly burnt. These little moments weave a safety net around your life. They remind you that you are part of a living world, not just an observer. Friends, old ones especially, became something of a sacred treasure. They carry versions of me that nobody else remembers. They know stories I forgot, jokes I once told, dreams I used to chase. Being with them feels like sitting in a room surrounded by all the different me's I've ever been. Keeping them close nourished my spirit in a way no vitamin ever could. And new friends, too, surprise me. Just because someone is new in your life doesn't mean they can't bring old comfort. Some people arrive quietly and fit into your days like they were always meant to be there. But it wasn't just relationships with others that shaped my longevity. It was also my relationship with time. There was a period when I treated time as an enemy, something that chased me, something I feared losing. Then one day, I realized time wasn't chasing me. It was walking beside me, waiting patiently for me to notice its lessons. I stopped rushing. Rushing doesn't get you there faster. It just makes you miss the scenery. Slowing down became one of the greatest gifts I gave myself. I savored mornings without checking the clock, enjoyed meals without multitasking, walked without calculating steps, and allowed conversations to wander without agenda. When I slowed down, small joys grew visible again. The way sunlight plays on the curtain, the sound of laughter from 2 streets away, the smell of a neighbor's cooking drifting through the air, a leaf spiraling gently to the ground. These tiny things, once unnoticed, began to feel like small miracles. I realized then that life wasn't measured in years, it was measured in moments, moments I had rushed past for too long. The more I paid attention, the more gratitude soaked into my life. Gratitude is an invisible bridge between contentment and joy. It pulls you away from the endless wanting of youth and into the peaceful appreciation of maturity. I stopped focusing on what was missing and started loving what was present. That shift alone made my days feel lighter. And part of living lightly is learning to let go. Letting go of expectations, both mine and others. Letting go of disappointments I carried like heavy luggage. Letting go of grudges that served no purpose but to drain my spirit. Letting go of the need to be right, the need to win, the need to impress. The moment I softened my grip on those things, I gained something greater, internal freedom. But perhaps the most unexpected lesson was this. Your inner voice becomes the most influential companion as you age. And if that voice is harsh, life becomes harsh. If that voice is gentle, life softens. I trained my inner voice the way one trains a shy dog, with patience, encouragement, and humor. I stopped scolding myself for mistakes and started congratulating myself for progress. I learned to speak to myself the way I'd speak to a dear friend, lovingly, warmly, forgivingly. And that changed everything. Journaling helped. It wasn't about writing beautifully or being consistent. It was about letting my thoughts spill onto paper before they hardened into worries. Each page was like a window cracked open, letting the stale air escape. And solitude, true solitude, became my sanctuary. Spending time alone didn't make me lonely. It made me centered. I learned to sit comfortably with my own thoughts, to observe them without judgment, to breathe through them. Stillness became a strength, not an absence. Yet, for all its beauty, solitude has a limit. Humans need connection the way trees need sunlight. So I balanced my quiet moments with laughter, conversation, storytelling, shared meals, and long-awaited reunions. Nothing strengthens your heart more than a genuine connection, and nothing shortens your life faster than loneliness. Even helping others, small acts, nothing heroic, extended my joy and brightened my days. There's something incredibly healing about kindness. When you brighten someone else's world, yours becomes brighter too. A warm word, a silly joke, carrying groceries for someone, listening when they need to speak. These little acts nourish you in ways you don't realize until you look back. I also learned to let go of people who drained my energy. You don't have to keep everyone in your life. Some people are meant to be chapters, not the whole book. And when someone constantly exhausts you, frustrates you, or dims your light, loving yourself sometimes means stepping away. Then there's money, an unexpected teacher. It took me years to realize that peace with money brings peace with life. Living below my means brought comfort. Saving a little brought safety. Avoiding debt brought freedom. And ignoring financial fads saved me from many messes. Money is not happiness, but the absence of money stress. Oh, that is a beautiful thing. It allows your mind to breathe, your heart to rest. Keeping my home tidy became another quiet form of self-respect. A clean space feels like a clear mind. I let go of clutter, bit by bit. The fewer objects I owned, the more space I had for joy, movement, creativity, and peace. Simplification wasn't a trend for me, it was liberation. Yet, among all these discoveries, the most important might have been purpose. Even on the slowest days, I gave myself something to look forward to, calling a friend, trying a new recipe, learning a new trick, exploring a new path, reading a chapter, tending a plant. Hope gives the heart a reason to beat stronger, and of course, sunlight. As strange as it sounds, morning sunlight steadied my mind more than coffee ever did. Just a few minutes standing by the window, letting the warm light hit my face, made my whole day feel aligned. It reminded me that a new day had begun and I was still part of the world's unfolding story. Nature itself became one of my greatest medicines. Fresh air, open sky, the rustling of leaves, the feeling of the earth beneath my feet. They grounded me. They reminded me that life is ancient and patient, and I'm allowed to be patient too. Through all this, something became very clear. The simplest things are often the most powerful, and the simpler my life became, the longer, fuller, and happier it felt. As I grew older, all these scattered lessons about food, movement, and peace slowly formed a map in my mind. A map not of where to go, but how to live. If earlier chapters of my life were about learning through chaos, these years became about learning through clarity. And the funny thing is, the more I paid attention, the more I realized how small habits quietly hold enormous power. Take eating, for example. I started paying attention to how I ate, not just what I ate. Eating slowly turned each meal into a gentle meditation. Instead of swallowing life whole, I began to taste it. Chewing carefully wasn't just good for digestion, it was good for the soul. And by stopping before I was full, I discovered that lightness after a meal feels far better than heaviness. Vegetables and fruits became my closest allies. There's a kind of honesty to real food, colors that weren't dyed, flavors not created in factories. My plate gradually turned into a little garden, and the more natural my food became, the more natural my energy felt. Fermented foods added their own magic, tuning my gut like an orchestra that had been out of practice for too long. I learned to treat sugar like a charming troublemaker, fun to be around, but only in small doses, and salt, well, salt was a mischievous friend that I learned to meet sparingly. Dark chocolate replaced pastries, whole grains replaced processed fluff, and water, pure water, became my loyal companion. It was astonishing how something so simple could transform the way I felt. There was one moment that changed me, waking up after a late-night meal feeling like I'd aged 10 years overnight. That morning I promised myself to respect evenings as a time of rest, not feasting. Warm herbal tea became my nighttime ritual, wrapping the day gently around me like a soft blanket. Movement, too, shifted from effort to joy. Walking was never exercise in the strict sense. It was a reminder that I was still part of the world. I began walking after every meal, letting my feet turn digestion into something graceful. Stretching became my good morning and good night. Not the dramatic kind, just kind, slow elongation that made my body sigh with relief. My posture changed as I changed. Standing tall felt less like a physical adjustment and more like a declaration. I'm still here, fully present. And the more I breathed deeply, the more I noticed how much I had been holding inside me that didn't need to be held at all. Balance practice, funny as it looked, saved me more times than I can count. Standing on one leg, brushing my teeth, moving mindfully around the house, it built a kind of quiet confidence. Nothing steals years faster than falls, and nothing prevents falls better than balance. But perhaps one of the most underrated secrets to living long is simply not sitting too much. I used to sink into chairs like they were traps disguised as comfort. Now, every hour or so, I stand up, stretch, walk, or simply move a little. Small motions, big difference. Then came the inner rules, the ones that shape the quality of your days more than any diet ever could. Sleep became sacred. Not just sleep, but good sleep. Gentle nights, early rest, soft wakings. When I treated mornings as invitations rather than obligations, everything shifted. Negativity became a room I stopped, renting space in. I learned to choose where my attention went. Life is noisy, but I don't have to let all the noise in. I unfollowed complaints. I unsubscribed from pessimism. I became selective with the emotions I allowed into my home. People say, forgive others, and that's good advice, but I discovered something even better. Forgive yourself. The moment I stopped punishing myself for old mistakes, I felt younger, lighter. Guilt ages you more than time ever will. Slowing down was another unexpected treasure. Life reveals its beauty at slower speeds. Walk slowly, eat slowly, speak slowly, think slowly, and suddenly the world feels kinder, more generous. And then there's joy. Joy is not something you chase, it's something you notice. A warm cup, a kind word, a strange cloud, a silly memory. Joy hides everywhere, waiting for you to look its way. But of all the lessons about the mind, perhaps the most transformative was realizing that the voice inside your head becomes your lifelong roommate. If that voice criticizes you nonstop, life becomes unbearable. If that voice cheers for you gently, life becomes manageable, even beautiful. So I cultivated a friendly voice, a compassionate one, a voice that says, "You're doing fine, buddy, even when I'm fumbling through my day." A voice that laughs with me, not at me. Connection, too, deepened in meaning. Sharing meals, sharing stories, sharing silence. These became small celebrations, talking with neighbors, calling friends, checking in on family. Each little interaction stitched my life together in ways that made everything stronger, warmer, longer. And kindness, both given and received, became a form of nourishment. When you lift someone's spirit, your own spirit rises with them. It's a 2-for-1 deal the universe generously offers every day. Through these experiences, habits, and quiet revelations, the rules kept unfolding naturally, blending into my days until they weren't rules anymore. They were simply the way I lived. And the more these lessons settled into my life, the more I began to understand how each one of them was quietly connected. You can't nurture your body if your mind is cluttered. You can't nourish your spirit if your relationships drain you. You can't love life if you don't make space for joy. Everything influences everything, and longevity isn't a single path. It's a whole network of gentle choices woven together over many years. One of the greatest choices I ever made was learning to treasure meaningful friendships. I noticed that as we age, our social circles shrink, but the quality of each connection grows. I held on tighter to people who made me feel like myself. Those who listened without judgment, laughed without restraint, and showed up even when life got messy. Old friends especially. They're like mirrors that reflect earlier versions of you. They remind you of who you've been, how far you've come, and sometimes how wonderfully foolish you once were. New friends brought something different. Fresh air. They entered my life without history, without expectation, sometimes without even trying, and yet they expanded my world unexpectedly. I realized that staying open to new connections keeps the heart youthful. There's a kind of magic in letting new people in, even when you think your story is already written. But equally important was learning when to let people go. Not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. There are those whose presence feels like a weight, whose conversations drain color instead of adding it, whose energy leaves your spirit tired. I used to hold on to everyone, thinking it was noble or kind. But kindness to others should never come at the cost of cruelty to yourself. The moment I learned to walk away from what was harmful, even quietly, my life blossomed again. Helping others, on the other hand, became a true tonic. A small act of kindness, a door held open, a word of encouragement, a bit of extra time spent listening, had a strangely uplifting effect on me. Each time I brightened someone else's day, mine brightened too. Kindness is reciprocal in a way most people don't notice until they try it consistently, and somewhere along the way, I discovered the subtle power of compliments, not the empty kind, not forced or polite, but genuine appreciation. Telling someone their smile is warm, their effort is inspiring, their kindness noticed. It spreads light faster than laughter. I learned that compliments cost nothing yet return everything. Finances taught me more than practicality. They taught me emotional balance. I realized that money is not about luxury, it's about stability. Peace with money means peace in the mind. I lived below my means, not because I feared spending, but because I valued calm. A simple financial life freed up so much mental space that I genuinely felt younger. Stress about money can age you faster than smoking, drinking, or bad sleep ever could. Tracking my spending became a form of mindfulness. I learned which purchases truly made me happy and which were simply attempts to fill emotional gaps. Most things we buy for comfort don't comfort us at all, but investing in experiences, tools, learning, or health, that kind of spending returns joy again and again. Having an emergency fund felt like giving my future self a warm blanket. Avoiding debt felt like removing heavy stones from my pockets. Ignoring financial fads felt like choosing wisdom over noise, and simplifying my possessions felt like letting my home exhale. My living space became an extension of my mind. When I cleaned my room, a part of my spirit cleared with it. When I removed clutter, the fog inside me lightened. Every unused item I let go of felt like releasing an outdated worry. The more space I created around me, the more space I discovered inside myself. Eventually, I realized that nature was the truest healer. Time. Outdoors refreshed me in ways no medicine ever did. A bit of morning sunlight tuned my internal clock. A stroll in the fresh air had a calming effect on my nerves. Watching a few leaves dance in the wind reminded me not to hold so tightly to everything. Nature taught me presence better than any book could. Listening to my body became a form of wisdom I wished I had learned earlier. A whisper of discomfort, a tug of fatigue, a spark of restlessness. Each one had something to tell me. The body never lies, it just speaks quietly. Respecting it kept me safe. Ignoring it never brought anything but trouble. Medical checkups became less of a chore and more of a partnership with my future. Prevention always beat repair, and respecting my natural rhythm, working when energized, resting when tired, made my days feel aligned with who I was, not who I thought I should be. Above all else, purpose gave my life its brightest colors. You don't need grand missions or extraordinary achievements, just something to look forward to. A walk with a friend, a new book, a project you've been itching to start, a recipe you want to try, a place you want to see. Hope is fuel. Without it, days feel heavy. With it, even slow days feel meaningful. And threading through all these lessons was one constant truth. Love yourself. Not the loud, glamorous type of self-love people like to post online, but the gentle, nourishing kind. The kind that forgives your past, that encourages your efforts, that comforts your failures, that accepts your imperfections, that celebrates your small victories, that lets you rest without guilt, that lets you dream without fear. I learned that inner kindness extends your life more than any diet or workout. When you treat yourself like someone worth caring for, your entire body responds. Your heart softens, your mind brightens, your breath deepens, and life returns to you in ways you didn't expect. And maybe that's the heart of all these rules, whether about food, movement, rest, relationships, finances, or the spirit. Each one is really an expression of self-love, a quiet, steady promise you make to yourself day after day. I want to live well. I want to live gently. I want to live fully. If you practice even a handful of them, life lengthens, not just in years, but in richness. And as all these lessons settled into the rhythm of my everyday life, something remarkable happened. Living well stopped feeling like effort and began feeling like who I was meant to be all along. There was no more forcing, no more chasing, no more grinding my way through each day. Instead, everything flowed with an ease I had never known when I was younger, an ease that made life not just longer, but gentler, richer, and wonderfully full. It's funny how simple the real secrets are. Eat thoughtfully, move joyfully, rest fully, forgive quickly, love slowly, breathe deeply, stay curious, stay connected. None of it is complicated. And yet, most. People run past these truths in a hurry, like I once did, thinking life is waiting somewhere ahead instead of unfolding right where they stand. The truth is, life is never ahead. It's always happening now. Right now, in every quiet breath, every small choice, every kindness, every moment you decide to live intentionally instead of automatically. The older I grew, the more I understood that every little decision adds up. Every spoonful of real food, every glass of water, every walk taken instead of postponed, every night of good sleep, every boundary drawn for the sake of peace, every laugh shared with someone who matters, every moment spent outside instead of inside your head. These choices shape you far more than any dramatic change ever could. Longevity isn't built in sudden transformations. It's built in thousands of tiny, invisible moments of choosing life. There were days, of course, when I didn't feel like doing any of it. Days when the world felt heavy, or my body felt slow, or the future felt uncertain. And on those days, instead of pushing myself harder, I learned to soften. I learned to rest, not quit. I learned to comfort myself instead of criticize. I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply take one tiny step. Drink one glass of water, take one deep breath, send one message to someone you love. And on those softer days, I discovered something profound. Self-kindness is the ultimate longevity tool. When you speak gently to yourself, your body relaxes. When you forgive yourself, your heart expands. When you allow yourself to rest, you recover faster. When you encourage yourself, your spirit lifts. When you celebrate yourself, even in small ways, life becomes brighter. At some point, I realized I had become my own caretaker, my own coach, my own cheerleader, and my own student. Life teaches you constantly if you have the tenderness to listen. Over time, I stopped seeing these rules as obligations. They became companions. They walked with me, breathed with me, stretched with me, cooked with me, laughed with me, and quietly kept me whole. They didn't extend my life by magic. They extended my life by meaning. And that, perhaps, is the secret no one talks about. Living long isn't about adding years. It's about adding depth, joy, and softness to the years you already have. So maybe you're expecting me to tell you that following all 100 habits will guarantee you reach 100 candles on your birthday cake. But that's not how life works. Life rarely cares about guarantees. What it does care about is presence, your willingness to be here fully with an open heart. And if you live with presence, if you live with awareness and gratitude and curiosity, something beautiful happens. Your days begin to stretch, your joy becomes louder, your problems feel lighter. Time itself becomes less of a thief and more of a partner. You begin to savor things you once rushed through. You begin to appreciate people you once overlooked. You begin to love parts of yourself you once criticized. And suddenly, you find yourself living not just longer, but deeper. I used to worry about aging. I worried about wrinkles, slowing down, forgetting things, becoming irrelevant. But somewhere along the way, aging stopped feeling like a loss and began feeling like a privilege. To age is to gather stories. To age is to expand your heart. To age is to understand life not just in theory but in practice. Growing older isn't something to fear, it's something to honor. It means you've stayed, it means you've learned, it means you've lived. And so, if you ask me today, as many still do, what the secret is, I suppose I'd say this. The secret to living to 100 is not to chase youth, but to embrace life, to befriend your body, to soften your mind, to open your heart, to stay curious, to stay kind, to stay grateful, to stay authentic, and to stay wonderfully, joyfully human. And if you can do that, imperfectly, inconsistently, with plenty of stumbles and laughter along the way, then you too will find yourself living a life not measured merely in years, but in depth, warmth, and meaning. If age truly brings wisdom, then this is mine. Life is long when life is loved. Life is rich when life is noticed. Life is full when life is shared. And life is beautiful when life is embraced, every day, in every small way. So here's to your journey, to the habits you build, the connections you cherish, the peace you create, the joy you protect, and the gentle choices you make every day. May you wake each morning with purpose, move through your days with gratitude, rest each night with peace, and live every year with a heart that keeps choosing wonder. Thank you for walking with me through these 100 tiny truths. May they serve you, support you, inspire you, and accompany you for all the beautiful years still waiting ahead. And who knows, maybe one day, long from now, someone will look at you with that same curious expression and ask, "What's your secret?" When they do, I hope you'll smile warmly and say, "It wasn't one big thing, it was 100 little ones, and I lived every day like it mattered," because it does, and so do you.